Okay, hello and welcome to the launch of the Glasgow Food Plan. My name is Pete Ritchie. I work for Nourish Scotland, and we've been involved from the beginning of this process, I think, with Glasgow developing its first comprehensive food plan. And I'm not going to talk for long, you'll be pleased to know. We've got a whole bunch of people here talking about different aspects of the food plan they've been involved in developing, and there's a little space at the end of the session for some audience questions we're going to deal with. And thank you for the people who sent in those questions. There's not going to be much time for chat, but do please put stuff in the chat box you want to share with people. There's so many people on this call who've got things to say, things they want to talk about. So do please keep the chat going during the session, and hopefully that'll be useful for everyone. So just to introduce ourselves though, I mean, why wouldn't a city have a food plan? And I think that's the question more than why would a city? Now, cities eat 70% of the food in the world, and the food system is responsible for, not only a third of greenhouse gas emissions, but basically how we use all our land in the world and the future of nature and the future of species and whether we have insects anymore and how the whales do. The whole of the natural world is shaped by the way we do food. And so for a city not to have a food plan and not to have a food policy almost seems a bit weird. So it's absolutely great to see that Glasgow's been working away on this plan, bringing together lots of people from lots of different organizations, really importantly, going out to the community and asking people, what do you think? What should be in the plan? How could we make things better for food for people in Glasgow? Because it's everything from how we deal with climate and nature to the fact that, we've had huge health inequalities in Glasgow and in Scotland for years. And some of that is to do with food and the fact that we've got, for a lot of people, the diet that they can afford to eat simply isn't keeping them well. That's not a new problem. That's gone back for 70, 80 years. We've had good evidence about that. And then in the last few years, since austerity, we've seen this huge rise in food banks and food insecurity and people running out of money to buy food and having to rely on the goodwill of volunteers and charities to put food on the table. So food's got a multiplicity of problems, and yet at the heart of it, we're quite capable of producing enough food in the world to make sure that everybody has a healthy, sustainable diet. And the real challenge of this year is can we make progress on that through big picture events like the UN Food Systems Summit, the Biodiversity Conference, and COP26, and then the Nutrition for Growth Summit. It really is just a big year for food policy. So it's absolutely great that Glasgow's launching its food plan, just at the start of that series of global events about trying to do food better globally. But if at the end of the day, those big global events don't change what we do day to day in Glasgow, then they've not had an impact. I think it's really easy to see a big gap between cities and food policy. We've left food policy very much to the supermarkets, the manufacturers, to the food chain, and we've become really quite disconnected from the farmers and the growers near where we live. And there's a great example of that in Glasgow, where the Clyde Valley used to supply us with tomatoes and other, stuff in the greenhouses. That's all gone. And some of the local food chains that we used to rely on between Ayrshire and Glasgow, Dumfries and Glasgow, have also sort of eroded over time. So I think there's huge opportunity for cities through the way they do procurement, but also the way that their retailers and their caterers work in terms of sourcing local produce can really start to change that and turn that around. So I think that's probably enough from me. There's lots of people talking, and we've tried to make sure that people cover different ground and different topics, different bits of the plan as we go through. So I'm going to hand over right now to Councillor Anna Richardson, who's been a fantastic support for the project throughout. Anna.
Thank you, Pete, and thank you for having me today. It's such a pleasure to be here this afternoon to mark this launch of the City Food Plan. It's a hugely important piece of work, and so much has been achieved to get to this point, despite the hurdles of the pandemic. But of course, the past year has not just brought challenges, it's also given us a renewed sense of focus as to why this work is so crucial for our city. We could not have imagined the world as it is now when we were meeting in person at the beginning of this process. But since then, the food plan has adapted along the way to reflect the response to COVID-19, so of course the impact on our city will not be clear for some time yet. We've known since the outset that the success of this food plan depends on us all. It simply cannot be delivered by one organisation alone. fantastic and inspiring work happening in communities across our city, which is supported by a range of public, private and third sector partners. Developing a city food plan should enable this work to flourish. A city food plan that will amplify, connect and build foundations to make a bigger impact. Working together, we increase each other's chance of success. And indeed, that collaborative approach has run throughout this process. So I'd like to put on record my thanks to everyone who's contributed to the plan, in particular the project team, of course, but also the huge range of contributors who are listed in the appendix, too many to name. And that really is the strength of this document. And I'm delighted that we'll have the chance to hear from just a few of them today. And I think it's worth reflecting on the impact that such wide-ranging work from all sectors has had. In a year where community and third sector organisations mobilised to support the most vulnerable and ensure that they had access to the food that they needed, we saw more clearly than ever before the inequalities that exist in our food system, but also the commitment from so many to change this reality. And that's why it's so fitting that following an application by the Glasgow Food Policy Partnership, Glasgow will receive a Sustainable Food Places Bronze Award in recognition of the efforts that have been made by our city's organisations, community groups and businesses. This award really does belong to you all. And one lesson we can take from the pandemic is how we can act in an emergency situation, even when resources are tight. Of course, the public health crisis of COVID is not the only emergency that we need to address. The climate crisis hasn't gone away. Indeed, it becomes more urgent with every year that passes. Improving the food system is a perfect opportunity to harness the huge benefits for both our people and our environment that can be achieved when we align decarbonisation tightly with social justice. And on that note, I'm expecting final approval of Glasgow's climate plan later this week, which sets out how we intend to reach net zero carbon by 2030. We know that food production, consumption and waste has a significant impact on our carbon emissions. So the Glasgow Food Plan will be key in enabling us to meet that ambitious target. Indeed, we've committed through our climate plan to supporting the people of Glasgow to move towards healthier, more sustainable food choices. And it's this joined up policy landscape that will help us to make more rapid progress than ever before. The City Food Plan is underpinned by a strong vision, rooted in fairness, for those who produce, sell and eat the food that Glasgow relies on. So now we have a City Food Plan that belongs to Glasgow. The clear message from the public consultation is that there is support for this work, and we have a mandate to be even more ambitious. While there are actions for public sector organisations and businesses, there are also opportunities for individuals to play their part, however small, by reducing household food waste, supporting local community growing initiatives, supporting a local food bank or a local shop or a food business. We are all connected and we can all be part of the solution. So there is a lot of work ahead. We haven't given ourselves an easy task, and resources will always be more stretched than we would like. We will need to continue to work together, to seek innovative ways of working, and to nurture emerging businesses and community groups that can also play their part. But for the well-being of our citizens and the future of our city's economy and environment, it's crucial that we take on this challenge and finally create a food system that will work for us all.
Thank you, Anna. We're now going to have an animation about the City Food Plan. Hello. That's great. And I think the great thing about a food plan is that it is right. Everybody can get involved in it. Everybody can do something. It's quite hard to sort of build a new power station or, you know, build a new wind turbine, but everybody can do something about the food system. So I think we're now going to hear from Abby Morden, and I think Abby's been working away as chair of the food group in Glasgow for so long, and it must be such relief, Abby, to finally have this signed, sealed, and delivered. So over to you, Abby.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah, it definitely is. Immensely proud of this piece of work, and all the time and effort and energy that's gone into it. I'm going to give an overview of the City Food Plan, which hopefully most of the 300 people who are in our lovely audience have actually seen it, read it and digested it. But this brief 10 minutes will give a bit of an overview as to kind of some of the kind of key features of it, and a little bit more about how you can engage with it going forward. So great words so far from Pete and Anna, Councillor Richardson, thank you for that. And that lovely little animation courtesy of Sheena at Glasgow Centre Population Health, which, yeah, hopefully you'll all be happy to share that across your networks as well. So Glasgow City Food Plan is part of the work of Glasgow Food Policy Partnership, as we've already heard, which is a large consortium of member organisations from across different sectors, all involved in the food system in different ways. So representing hospitality and food businesses, representing community foods and community organisations, education, different types of voluntary sector organisations, all sorts of different people involved, NHS and of course the City Council. So, and in turn, the City Food Plan has been a real collaborative and co-produced effort. All these organisations and more have been involved in the development of this work, which has taken us over 2 years. Hopefully you're all familiar with this slide by now, but a little bit of the context and the background. Our food system in statistics. These are some of the drivers. This is why we have done what we have done. This is why we have spent 2 years putting this time and energy into the City Food Plan to create an interconnected and holistic food system. We know that we've got some big issues. We know we've got some of the worst health records in the country. We know we've got the largest amount of vacant and derelict land in Scotland, in our city. So, but you know, there are some highlights. We're big on sort of tourist food and drink pound. So you know, we've got a lot going for us as a city. There was a lot to build on, some exemplary work happening, and certainly some very far-reaching targets that we could tie in with. So the City Food Plan, we kind of went backwards and forwards on the kind of underpinning principles and ethics. And I think this is kind of what grounds it, what roots the City Food Plan really is: equity, sustainability and health. And how we framed that was really important. We needed to make sure that it kind of touched every sphere. So equity meaning that it's not just good for people who are working in the food system, it's also good for communities. Sustainability meaning that, you know, we're kind of reaching our net zero carbon goals, that we're creating a kind of thriving, sustainable food system. And healthy, of course, we want the population of the city to be truly healthy and be producing and have access to affordable, good, healthy food. So how do we get here? Well, as I said, it's taken about 2 years. The Glasgow Food Summit of 2019, I think, was on the 29th of May. That kind of kick-started the whole process. And at that food summit, we had about 150 people who came along and kind of told us what they thought was up with Glasgow's food system. That kind of took us forward to sort of a small group of us, myself and Rika Gonzalez, Siobhan Boyle, Jill Murray, Lizzie Hammond and Louise McKenzie, all representing their own organisations, coming together as a small core project team to take this work forwards. We organised a development day in December, and we invited 70 different organisations to that. And from that, we set up 6 themed working groups that were themed around the different aspects of the City Food Plan, which I'll come back to in a bit. The draft plan was produced, and despite being in the middle of a pandemic, we still managed to roll out a consultation. Not quite as in depth or quite as kind of far reaching as we would have liked it to have been, but we had over 400 responses, which is pretty good considering the whole thing was online at the end of the day. We of course sort of had the lessons of the pandemic to learn from, and that sort of gave us a lot of a steerage as to how we could increase the resilience of the food system. And that brings us through to today. Well, it was signed off at Community Planning Partnership on the 11th of May, and here we are today with all you lovely people joining us. So those 6 themes, hopefully you've all got these embedded in your brains by now. We've chose these themes so that we could try and cover all aspects of the food system. We had a different working group for each of the different themes made up of people, member organisations from different aspects of the food system who could lend their expertise, their knowledge, their skills into creating the chapter for that particular theme, creating the actions that went with that. And then the 6 of us took those actions, we sat down together, we pulled them apart, we put them back together again, we looked for the cross-cutting themes, and we tried to figure out, okay, where's the synergy here, where are the overlaps, where does this cross-cut? And that was really important part of trying to make sure that the 76 actions contributed to these outcomes. I'm not going to go through all these, you can read, and anyway, the slides I'm sure could be shared afterwards, but yeah, so we kind of, again, worked long and hard on thinking about what these outcomes should be, the framing, the wording, all of which, as you can hopefully tell, is designed to kind of demonstrate the interconnectedness, the holisticness, and the far-reaching nature of our food system. And under these 9 outcomes, we have, as I said, a 76-point action plan. So the next few slides, I'm just going to go through the top 3, really, which aren't even the top 3, they're just sort of 3 that have been sort of picked out by me to sort of demonstrate or illustrate the outcomes, the actions within the different themes. So food poverty, which is fair food for all. We will be taking a more coordinated response with more joined up working between emergency food provision and income maximisation. That work is already well underway. There's some really good stuff happening, and a lot of this is going to be sort of brought to life by the snapshots that you're going to hear from sort of different organisations in just a moment. One of the important ones here is improving access to healthy and sustainably produced food in local communities, and for me that's an underpinning principle of the City Food Plan, is that everybody, regardless of their income, their social background, their culture, should have access to affordable, good, healthy food. Community food, which is probably my baby. So we kind of have a huge range of actions contributing to the community food theme. There will be, as it's in development right now, an information and mapping hub for community food activity across the city. We want to make sure that local people are really truly involved in community food and food projects across their local areas. And we're also working pretty hard on food education across communities and with schools. In procurement and catering, we want to make sure that more Scottish seasonal and local food is going to be available through schools, and that's part of the Food for Life Bronze Awards, which Stephen will talk about in a wee bit. And also, importantly, making sure that our catering staff are upskilled and that is seen as a valuable and important job to have in our communities. Food economy, really important sector in Glasgow. So again, making sure that secondary food producers and traders and makers are connected with locally sourced producers, so that we're able to distribute that food to a wider number of people. And also the stuff around upskilling people to sort of around catering and education, to make sure that more people coming through the education system understand about the use of local, seasonal and sustainable food. Food and the environment, again, another really important one for reducing food waste, but not just that, it's also about increasing sustainable food provision, by increasing our quantity of food being produced through urban agriculture. And finally, children and young people, making sure that our children, not just in schools, but across Glasgow and outside of the school environment, have, again, equal access to affordable, good, healthy food. And particularly interested on how development of the last action goes here, clustering of fast food outlets, limiting those around schools particularly. So, where are we going next? Glasgow Food Policy Partnership will continue to have oversight of the implementation of the plan. So we'll be taking an annual review of the actions. We'll be looking at the context, what's changed over that time, what we need to add in. We are about to reconvene those thematic working groups who will oversee and monitor the progress of the actions around their particular theme. And as I said, we're going to hear from a few different people who are going to give little sound bites of projects and work that is already underway. So how can you get involved? Well, we need you to support the plan. We've put so much work into it that we want everybody across Glasgow to embrace it and sign up to it and use it. We want you to use it by borrowing those outcomes and the actions and the evidence so that you can inform your funding applications and your future work. But not just that, we need you to tell us that you're doing it. So if you are using the City Food Plan, or if you are doing any kind of work that you're looking at the actions and going, oh, we're doing this and we're doing that, and that contributes to this and that and the other. So please let us know, because if you don't let us know, then we won't know how brilliant we are all being together. And more importantly, disseminate this across your networks and let other people know about the City Food Plan. So that just leaves me to say thank you, and thank you mostly to all the different people that have contributed their time, their energy, their thoughts and their ideas, and the organisations that have been part of the thematic working groups, the 400 plus people that responded to the consultation, and the dedicated team who have seen this through from beginning to end. You're all great. Thank you very much.
Abby, that's great. Thank you. Packed a lot into a short period there. There's a lot there. And as Councillor Richardson said before, trying to join up in all these different policy areas is a real challenge, and I think it's been an achievement of the food plan to make all those connections. So we're now going to hear from Fiona Moss from the Health and Social Care Partnership, who's going to say a bit more about the ways in which the plan's been joined up to other bits of the system. Fiona.
Thank you, and I am really pleased to be one of the many people involved in the development of this food plan. I head up health improvement and equalities in the Health and Social Care Partnership and work across Greater Glasgow and Clyde, NHS Board and Glasgow City as well. So I get to wear lots and lots of different hats. And I suppose I would say, just in a context of this, that if we think about the ambition of the plan, that everyone is able to eat healthily, affordable, culturally appropriate good food, irrespective of where you live, your income or your personal circumstances. I think that's an amazing ambition for us to have as a city, and one I want to be part of. I think I've been asked to give a little bit of a sense of some of the strategic fit for the food plan. And I would say that the team of people that have been working to develop this food plan and the broader contacts that they've had have really worked in a very collaborative way to do this. If food brings us together, well, the food plan has definitely brought us together. And a number of the groups that I chair or are part of are actively involved in the development of the food plan already. And I'll name just a few of them. Under the Fair Food for All component, we have in the city the Poverty Leadership Panel that's been working hard for a number of years to try and address the poverty issues that we have in the city. And as part of that, I chair the Challenge Child Poverty Partnership, which met this morning. And we have been actively involved in the food plan as well, recognising that child poverty affects not just children's experiences of food here and now, but also how their relationship of food develops, forms, and moves forward. So it's a really significant issue for us. And we have been really struck by the changes in child poverty rates in the city. Recent research just published by Loughborough University shows that over the last 5 years, we've seen just over a 5% increase in child poverty in Glasgow City. So that's an extra 1,656 children living in poverty now than previously. So we are very keen to see where we can support and work on a range of the actions that are listed in the food plan. We've also had a lot of work going on around community food, by community food projects already mentioned, and by community projects that before the pandemic didn't really have that much to do with food, but certainly do now. And I've likened it to Harry Potter's Room of Requirement, all the parcels of requirement that have gone out over the last year, community groups working together to deliver food, to support work in allotments and community gardens, cookery and other endeavours have really been extremely strong for us as a city, and made easier because of the work that's gone on through Glasgow Helps, supported and run by GCVS. So a whole network of community effort has been going on. And we will see the community food work continue to be developed under the city's growing strategy and also the city's volunteering strategy, because actually without volunteering, a lot of this community endeavour will not be able to take place. We are working, and the food plan directly aligns to 10 of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And certainly the food plan links in strongly to the Sustainable Glasgow Partnership and the Climate Emergency Implementation Plan. So we are seeing food from all angles within the food plan, and I think that's where its strength is. And for me, I couldn't stop without saying something about health and well-being, coming from a public health background. Good food is fundamental to our well-being. Every single day of our lives affects how we feel, how we act, and how we move forward with all the other things we want to do with our lives. And I suppose I was particularly struck because we often think of food as our physical well-being, but we recently had the opportunity for organisations to access funding for a winter social well-being grant, and there were 67 organisations in the city that were funded to provide activities that really enabled people to feel less isolated during the pandemic. And more than half of those had food at their core, the provision of food and food activities, just reminding us that food is the nutrition of the mind as well as nutrition of the body. We have a food plan that is setting the process for the next 10 years, and we need to work across all the partnerships that we've got now in the city and lots that are yet to be invented. But I suppose I'll just finish by saying that even if all of those partnerships did some amazing things, it doesn't replace the need for lots and lots of local actions between neighbours, between groups that actually have a good food impact. So we're just glad to be part of this journey and really welcome the launch of the plan. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Fiona. And we're doing well for time. We're just running about 5 minutes behind overall, and we've now got a series of snapshots of some of the things that's already going on in Glasgow, because it's not like we're starting with a blank piece of paper here. So I'm going to hand over to Siobhan Boyle from the Child Healthy Weight Programme.
Good afternoon, and I'm really pleased to be here today representing Glasgow HSCP with a new Child Healthy Weight project which has been piloted in Glasgow. This project is strongly linked to Glasgow City Food Plan, and it features in the Children and Young People section of the plan. So just to give you some background, the Scottish Government ambition is to halve childhood obesity by 2030. 24.4% of primary 1 children in Glasgow are currently at risk of being overweight or obese. So Scottish Government funding has been put in place to strengthen support from birth to primary 1 to reduce the risk of this. and NHS GGC were awarded £187,000 for a one-year pilot in Glasgow. So the purpose of this project is to pilot a whole system community food nurturing programme with families of preschool children, and it looks to combine actions on food insecurity, healthy eating and physical activity in 3 Glasgow neighbourhoods. The aims of the project are to develop and expand partnerships between family support organisations in these areas and families themselves to address local food issues. It also looks to reduce food insecurity by maximising income and enhancing connections to food supplies in local areas and choice of affordable healthy foods. It also looks to address personal challenges with food and signpost people to appropriate healthy weight supports. And also it aims to look at supporting families and communities to enjoy and celebrate food, which is really important. Key work areas of the project. Firstly, the 3 neighbourhoods were identified and those were endorsed at the HSCP's Children's Wellbeing and Mental Health Group, and they were recommended due to relevant data and local characteristics, looking at child health profile data and child poverty reports. In the south, we have decided on Priest Hill, Houselwood, Nits Hill and Pollock as a defined neighbourhoods. For North East, it's Rocasey, Carthamlock and Cranhill, and for North West, it's Drumchapel. So we've recruited to the project already to support the project. So myself in my role, I'll be coordinating and leading the project on behalf of the City Health Improvement Team. And also we've recruited 3 staff, 1 per locality, child healthy weight seniors who are part-time. We've also got a financial inclusion component to the project, and we'll have 1 day per week financial inclusion support in each of the areas. Also, just to say, the project will support the development of neighbourhood food networks to map local food systems and identify gaps in an action plan, and there'll be a small pot of funding available to support that with all the partners that will come together in those areas. We're also looking to provide appropriate food and nutrition training for those that work in the areas identified and for key stakeholders to help them and to use that information to support families. We're also looking to develop pathways for families to access a whole range of supports, including money advice, food pantries and community food initiatives. Also, in a practical sense, we have criteria in place for some enhanced supports for families. So we have the delivery of meal packs that will be going out to families once a week with a recipe to help them cook healthy meals. And also a small grants fund will be available to support families to cook at home. So that's to help with fuel costs and for cooking equipment, and that will be in the form of some vouchers. We've also got online cooking demonstrations that we put together and hosted online to educate on cooking from scratch. And we'll be running social media campaigns in each of the areas to support and basically to promote all the wealth of supports that are there in communities and further afield. We'll also have an online hub for families to promote access to pre-5 physical activity opportunities. There's a whole host of work that will be on with this project. So our next steps are, for health improvement, are engaging currently with neighbourhood stakeholders to spread the word on the project. And now we're working with communities to get a catchy name for the project, which is appealing to community members. The project plan will continue to be implemented, and we're in partnership with a multi-agency steering group to guide on that. And Glasgow Centre for Population Health will be evaluating the project. So really just to say, look out for this work in your localities, and please get in touch for any questions following today. Thank you. And I'll hand over now to Stephen Sawyers from Glasgow City Council.
Thank you, Siobhan. I've just introduced myself. I'm Head of Catering and FM for Glasgow City Council, and I've been in post since September 2019. Today I just really want to talk to you about some of the activities that we've taken as a senior team to help deliver to the Glasgow City Food Plan. First of all, as a senior team, we very much decided to take a step back and look at a kind of service reform programme, because we felt that we needed to look at opportunities to develop the business further. All of this was really aligned to some strategic objectives that we had, and from that, many of the projects that we've actually created are aimed at delivering for the Glasgow City Food Plan. And fundamentally, from a senior team perspective, we see ourselves as on a food journey. So there's 3 activities I want to talk to you about very briefly today. The first one really is about the online school payments. The cashless catering system is something that we are late to. Glasgow has been not so much at the front of that, but certainly we are now looking to implement that over the next 12 to 18 months. And whilst we are coming at this further down the line, we do see that there's an opportunity to get lessons learned from other local authorities that have put this in place, and also that Parent Pay, who's the provider of this, will have functionality available to us that maybe was not there on day one. So we're looking at things like Kitchen Manager, the stock system. All of these things will assist in reducing food waste. And fundamentally, for the parent, what we're trying to do is really make sure that we enhance that experience to make sure that we absolutely maximise the number of our school pupils to actually go into the school dining hall and make sure that they are eating the food from our menus. The timeline for online school payments is a bit fluid, but we do hope to make sure that cashless catering is in place during the next school term. And the second thing is, from a partnership point of view, we've been working very closely over the last 12 months with the Soil Association, and Margaret Gilmore and her team have been absolutely brilliant partner for us over that period. And even although we were working through the pandemic, we were really able to make some great progress in getting us very close now that Glasgow is going to achieve the Bronze Award as part of that Food for Life programme. And we're very excited about that. It's a key milestone in terms of the action plan for the food plan. And from our point of view, we want to go further. So we've got some aspirations that once we get over the line with the Bronze Award, that perhaps we can have aspirations to go even further with that. And from my point of view, it's a great example of collaborative working and partnership working, and we've reached out there, and that's been a great success. Finally, from me, I wanted to touch on the rollout plan for universal free school meals and the approach that we're taking to that. We've got a project team, we've got a working group along with other services within Glasgow City Council. We've decided to look at it from a work stream point of view, and we've got 9 work streams. There are 4 which we see as a priority as we go forward, which is accommodation, because clearly we need to make sure we've got the infrastructure and the building capacity for the rollout of free school meals. Marketing and promotion is going to be a key activity for us. Clearly our menu is something that we want to make sure is attractive to school children. And last but not least of that 4th priority is the people side of things. And I'll touch on the people side of things just a little bit more. Certainly from my perspective, and certainly some of the research that's been done over the years, if we can actually reach out to sort of the 4 key stakeholders, then we can actually make a success of the rollout of universal free school meals. The first real engagement group is with the parents themselves, and we feel that we can make better engagement with the parents. And with that in mind, we've already got some forums planned to actually take part in, either at the end of this current term or certainly at the start of the new term. Further to that, there's the people themselves. Again, the engagement and the involvement we feel is absolutely fundamental to making sure that they feel part of that. And if we can make connections between the pupil in the dining hall and the learning in the classroom, then that's actually going to help everyone concerned. The third group that we want to engage with is the head teachers. It's very clear from a Glasgow perspective that when we go around all of the schools, the actual take-up of school meals is enhanced where we've got the head teacher on board and we've got them committed to that. And again, we've actually got some forums in place. In fact, I was invited to a head teacher meeting tomorrow to present on our approach to the project. So that'll be a good start in that engagement. And last but not least is really the catering managers themselves, our own staff. It's absolutely fundamental that we make sure that we provide them with the training, the engagement, the communication, the involvement as we make those changes to the process. The timeline for rollout of free school meals is aggressive. Glasgow's in a good position because we've already rolled out to primary 4, so we are slightly ahead of most other local authorities. The primary 5 rollout is coming in January 2022, with primary 6 and primary 7 scheduled to be delivered in August 2022. So in summary, I see that the introduction of the cashless catering system, the collaboration with third-party organisations, the Soil Association and the Food for Life programme being a great example of that, and the engagement piece that I've talked about there for the rollout of free school meals means that the food journey that I talked about at the outset, we will have made great progress in over the next 12 to 18 months. It's going to be very challenging, but I do believe that Glasgow and K3FM in particular, from a local authority point of view, is in a good position to respond to the challenges and make sure that we meet that challenge going forward and continue the progress that we've already made. So thank you for listening to that update. I'll now pass you on to Eleanor Dillon for her update.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Hi, everyone. I am here representing the Food and Climate Action Project today. We are a brand new project. We're funded by the National Lottery, and we are a partnership between Glasgow Community Food Network, Glasgow Eco Trust, The Space, St Paul's Youth Forum, Central and West Integration Network, and Urban Roots. Really hoping I haven't forgotten anybody there. In terms of our relation to the City Food Plan, most of our activity is kind of aligned to the Community Food Chapter, actions 14 through to 25 in particular. I'm assuming we've all memorized these off by heart by now. But in terms of what that looks like in practice, the actions really link to the themes of our project, which include increasing urban agriculture across the city, both small, bigger projects, building on the great work that's already taken place. Food education, we have a really big focus on food education, food systems education, both in informal and formal settings. COP26, I imagine many people on this call, COP26 is on their mind, but in terms of the project, we're looking to put on a series of food fringe events related to COP, both in the run up to COP, during COP, and after the week itself. We do, as a project, have quite a big focus on the legacy of COP26 for Glasgow's communities. And the way that kind of takes shape for us is through the creation of a number of food forums or kind of participatory spaces for community-led climate action to take place. And we do have funding within the project, support within the project to allow smaller groups to take their ideas forward, to make their ideas a reality within the second year of the project. And finally, in terms of our themes, last but not least, which I think has been, this theme in particular has been touched upon already, but we are looking to create an online accessible hub of all the great information that's going on in Glasgow and beyond, and put that in a place where everyone can get access to it. So yeah, that's it in terms of the project. I just want to say two final things briefly. Firstly, I want to give a little bit of a virtual shout out to my other colleagues within Glasgow Community Food Network who are working on the Strategic Response Project, and the activity that they take relates quite directly to the Fair Food for All food poverty plan. So I just wanted to acknowledge them within my update today. And finally, just to say a really big thank you to everybody who's been involved in the creation of the plan. It honestly is such a privilege. There's not another word for it. It's so great to come into a brand new project like this and to have such an established network of stakeholders, of connections, this map of activity, as well as these actions, which are kind of like a guiding force for us in our project going forward. I think I've absolutely whistled through that, but please do keep in touch, reach out. I'm really happy to share my email with anyone on the call, and yeah, we're really open to all opportunities to collaborate going forward, and please do get involved and reach out through maybe one of our upcoming food and climate cafes, which will be happening across the city in July. So thank you very much for that. I'm now going to pass over to Rebecca Ricketts from Circular Glasgow. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much, Eleanor. And yes, that was a whistle-stop tour. Thank you. And thanks also to everybody who's joining us today. For those of you that are not familiar with who Glasgow Chamber of Commerce is, it's a non-profit membership organisation, and we very much look at using that network to connect businesses while supporting sustainable economic growth for the city. And in 2016, we launched Circular Glasgow, an initiative very much designed to encourage businesses, including the food and drink sectors, to really look at how they minimise waste and maximise resources by adopting innovation, design thinking and circular strategies. And I suppose where we fit into the food plan, it's very much around the food economy. I think most of us on this call today are going to be absolutely familiar with that classic stat where 33% of food is wasted before it even hits our plates. And I think for me, I think that's real evidence that the current linear food system is simply not sustainable. You know, we really need to look at how do we adopt the circular economy and how circular approaches can really help us to ensure healthy, affordable food is accessible for all. But also with the Chamber of Commerce hat on and from a business perspective, there are also real business benefits in terms of significant savings and competitive opportunities. Now, if I was just to kind of give you a little bit of a flavour in terms of some of the impact and where Circular Glasgow has been playing its role around the food and drink sector, I suppose looking at it nationally, the work that we do very much feeds into, excuse the pun, the Scottish Government's target to reduce food waste from the 2013 baseline by 33% by 2025. We also play a role in supporting the Food Waste Reduction Action Plan of our supporters Zero Waste Scotland, and we're also strongly supporting and align our work with Scotland Food and Drink in terms of supporting local and buy local. At a city level, we are absolutely thrilled that circular economy has been very much embedded as part of the Glasgow City Food Plan, and it also very much forms the backbone of Glasgow City Council's circular economy route map for the city as well. And I'm really thrilled. This is, we haven't announced this yet, so this is exclusive to you guys. I'm really delighted to announce that Glasgow will be piloting a city food waste reduction initiative in the lead up to COP26. Aligned very much with the City Food Plan and working in partnership with Experience Glasgow Food and Drink, the latest regional group to secure funding from Scotland Food and Drink. If you're a business that works within the hospitality, food and drink sector, we absolutely want to hear from you. I already know there's some brilliant examples of businesses already showcasing the very best sustainable practice. And this is a real opportunity for you guys to get on board and to showcase that in the lead up to COP26. So do get in touch because we want to absolutely hear from you and share your story and good work. For those of you looking to learn a little bit more about Circular Glasgow, I know that Rika's going to kindly share some handy links for you. I created a food and drink information hub so you can quickly get your head in the game in terms of what do we mean by circular economy for those that are new to the agenda. And also do connect with Circular Glasgow's website. There's some really handy tools there in terms of helping you start your circular journey in your own business or your own organisation. Also some really inspiring stories about what's already happening in the city of Glasgow, and also an opportunity for you to engage with other people that are working in this agenda. We've got a network of over 200 members, so please do connect there. But all that's left for me to say is thank you very much to the team. You're doing amazing work and I'm absolutely delighted to be supporting that. And I'll hand over to Kathleen now from Glasgow Third Sector Interface.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name's Kathleen Caskey. As Rebecca said, I'm from Glasgow Third Sector Interface. One of the issues always, if I have to speak in public, is I have to start every speech with a huge list of acronyms and how they fit together. I'll try not to. Glasgow Third Sector Interface is partnership of GCVS, Volunteer Glasgow and the Social Enterprise Network, and we are the government recognised development and representation organisation for the third sector in Glasgow. In March 2020, when we all got sent home, if you can remember how we all felt, the absolute terror, none of us understood anything about this virus, none of us knew what was happening, we just knew we had to go home, get safe, get our families in. And the third sector responded breathtakingly, absolutely breathtakingly. Within days, they were reaching out to their communities, to the people that they served, checking they were right and getting the food out there. Now, Fiona Moss spoke earlier about how a lot of non-food organisations suddenly started doing food. And that was true. The scale of the emergency food response in those first couple of months in the pandemic is one of the most extraordinary and inspiring things I've ever seen, led by the third sector. Huge input from funders, nearly £14 million in additional funding was put into Glasgow last year around that time. There was well more than 1 million meals delivered to people. We started to recognise quite soon on the limitations of that, particularly around issues of fresh food, around issues of halal food and other food for people, vegans and various I have just as a complete mind blank, and that thing you have where you can't eat not glucose, doesn't matter, you know what I mean, sorry, I've got a complete, anyway, if you had special needs in a diet, it was quite hard to meet with that general thing. What we did also know is that this wasn't the solution to food. There was a phenomenal emergency response because everybody panicked that people might be sitting in their homes, too scared to go out and starving. And I think the whole third sector, the whole public sector said, no one's going to starve in Glasgow. And the response was phenomenal. But it's not a strategy. And that's why we're so happy to see the adoption of this strategy, so that in some future crisis, which hopefully will never happen, there is a strategy behind it, there is underpinning behind it, there are spaces where people can grow their own food, where they can access their food. So we never have to go back to this, you know, going around the doorsteps with food parcels. As the pandemic developed, we formed one of the most productive partnerships we've had, which was with Glasgow City Council. GCVS set up the Glasgow Helps Helpline, which was just designed for everybody to put their information on it, to say this is where we are covering, this is what we're doing, whether it's food, digital inclusion, daily calls, whatever. We're now looking to develop that into a permanent directory for the city of emergency support and immediate support. And the food stuff will need to be, I will play into that so that people know where to get food if they're stuck. We also work with the council to develop, they have a phone line for people, initially came through shielding, but there's an ongoing helpline there. They are still referring, there are still people in the city who are facing immediate food issues, and sometimes because they've had to self-isolate, sometimes because they don't have money. So we've got a really super partnership with the food banks and with Glasgow Community Transport, getting food parcels out to people who need them. Less numbers now, far fewer numbers than earlier, but that service is still there, and we're going to build on it and look at it and provide that service. So I guess the key thing, because I appreciate we're coming to the end now, is just the third sector has proven that it can do an emergency food response. It can prove that it went out and did it. There was a lot of duplication. It could have been better organised. On the whole, it was just phenomenal. But what we need is a longer term solution, so that if in 3 years or 4 years, for some reason, something as scary and frightening as COVID happens again, we will not be facing that thought that there will be people perhaps starving behind their closed doors. So we welcome the food plan, and we look forward to all third sector organisations, not just food-led ones, becoming engaged in the community spaces, in the community growing, because we know that these kind of initiatives don't just provide food, they also tackle poor mental health, they tackle isolation, they tackle the whole range of problems that Glasgow faces, and are a key way of tackling the inequality that too often still blights Glasgow. So congratulations to everybody that did the detailed work on the food plan, and we look forward to working with you in as many different ways as possible over the years ahead. So thank you.
Kathleen, thank you so much. And there's so much for everybody to say on this. Everybody's got so much they want to get out and communicate. So thank you, everybody, for keeping to time as close as we could. We've only got 5 minutes left for questions, and we've had some great questions in. But I think perhaps if, first of all, we could take the question from Alison Wilson, so we make sure we address this, because it's a big, important question Alison's asked, which is essentially saying we've got great provision for food banks and community food projects in Glasgow, but that some people in particular struggle to access those for a variety of reasons, particularly people who are asylum seekers and refugees, but also women who are surviving domestic violence, and people who are from different communities who need, as Kathleen was just saying, different types of food that's culturally acceptable for them, and just the difficulties and stigma and not wanting to ask for help that comes with this. I think Siobhan was going to answer that. Siobhan, can I bring you in?
Yes, thank you, Pete. So the plan overall is really that everyone, regardless of background circumstances, should be able to access healthy, affordable and culturally appropriate food. So that is a commitment overall for the plan that we'll all work together on. In particular, Action 11 in the plan looks to develop an accessibility guide for community food and advice services to encourage best practice and accessibility to all. So as part of that work, what we'll be looking to do is scope the issues and the prevalent barriers that are stopping people from being able to access healthy foods across key groups and provide solutions to address these issues. So a range of partners have already offered commitment to this action already, and we'll be looking to have a working group that works on that, and more people can join if interested, to look at the variety of groups out there that there's barriers in place for them to be able to access these supports. We've engaged already also with a variety of BAME groups, and the consultation went out to a variety of integration networks and interfaith groups across the city. We'll also take on board the learning from the Glasgow Community Food Network's work that's been undertaken, and also the work of governed community projects, Fair Food for Asylum Seekers project, as well as what's been found out with Glasgow's Helps, to get a Glasgow picture of where we are at and where our gaps in support are. And that's how we'd look to go forward to respond to that.
That's great. Thank you, Siobhan. Alison, I hope that was helpful, and it sounds as if there's plenty of space for you also to get involved and bring your knowledge and insights into that conversation as we go forward. The second question we've just got a couple of minutes left, but I know Abby can be very brief, is from Jackie McMaster, City of Glasgow College, which is about trying to get employment for students with support needs who've got interested in growing, they've learned about growing sustainably, but how do they go on and get a job? Abby.
Yeah, I think Jackie's hit the nail on the head. One of the key issues that we've been seeking to address in some of the actions in the community foods chapter. So pathways onwards for young people out of mainstream education and into kind of working within the community food sector. It is a big barrier. There is a big barrier around it. There is a big gap around it. But something that we're hoping to set up over the next couple of years is more apprenticeships with community food organisations, community growing organisations, hoping to tap into things like the Kickstarter fund that's part of the Department of Work and Pensions commitment to young people to make sure that everybody has, every young person should be able to access training or apprenticeships of some description. Yeah, and more work placements, more work shadowing, and more training embedded both within the colleges and the schools and out with as well. For those young people that mainstream education doesn't necessarily suit. So yeah, there are loads of barriers around it, and those are some of the things that we're going to be looking to do to seek to address those issues.
That's great. Thanks, Abby. We've got one more question from Gabby Morris about just generally how people with living in poverty have been engaged in the city plan. Siobhan, can you very briefly address that, and then we'll just wind up the session.
Yeah, so in usual circumstances, it would have been face-to-face consultation with communities, but in response to the situation we're in, we did use social media a lot to engage with people and advertise our online consultation events, and we also provided train-the-trainer events for organisations that were engaging with communities to then run their own events on the food plan. So we really just wanted to get people involved in as many ways as we could, really. We've also linked, as Fiona had said earlier, with a lot of the key organisations who link with people who are experiencing food poverty in the city, and we've linked with the variety of Glasgow Health and Social Care Partnership poverty groups, the Challenge Child Poverty Group as well. So we're also looking to link closely with Poverty Leadership Panel, who have got people who have experienced and lived experience of poverty, and these are the types of strides that we're wanting to do now, is really just start to connect with people on the ground and across the whole plan to make sure that there's engagement throughout all sections over and above the food poverty section.
That's great, Siobhan, and we recognise all the difficulties of been trying to keep everything going and try and engage people with this pandemic. You've done a fantastic job. Okay, I'm just going to wrap up to say that everybody's been really clear, everybody's really enthusiastic about this. It's the start of a journey, not the end of a journey, and we've still got 275 people on the call. And what I want to say is, don't say in a year's time or 2 years' time, oh, whatever happened to that Glasgow Food Plan? You know, it doesn't seem to have done much. you know, it's going to work if we all get involved and make it work, and it's not going to work if we don't get involved and don't make it work. So it really is a call for people to work together on this and really deliver on the ambition that's in the plan. We've heard today from, you know, changes that are already going on with the big machine. I mean, Steve and I take my hat off to you getting Bronze Food for Life. That's a real achievement in turning, you know, a huge machine that's got to deliver food to so many people in Glasgow, and getting Food for Life, I think, is a huge achievement. And then from the Climate Action Project, just all the wealth of community action that's going on in streets and parts of Glasgow and communities and street corners. It's fantastic. And getting the big bits and the little bits together is important, but also the private sector, the Chamber of Commerce, getting really involved in this thing and looking at the circular economy, looking at stuff in the run up to COP to really showcase what we can do with food in Glasgow from the private sector as well. I think it's a fantastic partnership that's been developed here. And you've got just a great opportunity to make Glasgow the city that people look to, not just at COP26, but afterwards as a place where they really do joined up food policy. So thank you very much to all our speakers and panelists. It's been a great event, and thank you so much to the people who've listened. I'm sorry there hasn't been much chance for you to interact, but there's plenty of chance going forward for you to interact with the Glasgow Food Plan and to follow up on today's conversation. So thanks a lot and have a good afternoon.